So the question is, what is Ubuntu and what does Ubuntu mean to me? I guess everyone will have their own personal definition of Ubuntu and how they've experienced it in their lives and in their communities and historically. The thing is that Ubuntu is not a unique African concept. It's a global concept that has been used by ancient civilizations all over the world. In Africa, we call it Ubuntu. And it seems that it's become a global expression now. So it's very exciting that Africa seems to be birthing not just the human race, but also a philosophy of unity within community. And ultimately, that's what it means to me. Ubuntu is the simplest expression of unity within community, where people work together, they cooperate for the greatest benefit of all the people within their community. And that's in essence what we're doing here in Waterval-Boven, at the home of Ubuntu, the Stone Circle Village and the Ubuntu Village. I ended up here because of my research into origins of humankind and ancient civilizations, and I found that we are sitting right in the heart of the largest vanished civilization complex ever discovered on planet Earth so far, up to date. And that brought me here, first doing research into the stone circles and into Adam's calendar that has now become well known around the world and is growing in awareness all the time. But that led to a deeper understanding of what this place means to humanity and how it connects us to our origins as a species and what we can learn from all this knowledge of ancient civilizations. And that's really where I discovered, about 10 years ago in 2005, I discovered that there was a time in human history that money did not exist, that people lived in united communities working towards the benefit of everyone in their community. And somehow that got corrupted. And that's when I started promoting this philosophy of Ubuntu in a modern society, or Ubuntu in the world of the 21st century. How can we apply this philosophy to the world today? And I came up with a concept called contributionism. Now, some people jump to the conclusion that it's like communism or socialism or whatever, or self-sustaining communities, and they'd all be wrong. Contributionism is very unique because it means creating abundance within communities, so much abundance by working together, by working in unity and cooperating as opposed to competing. So through this cooperation, creating so much abundance within your community that you can make your goods and produce available to all your surrounding and neighboring communities, and not just worrying about yourself, because self-sustaining communities are not really a solution for the future of humanity. Self-sustaining communities is more looking at yourself as a selfish individual. It's all about me, me, me. Now you're extending it to us, us, us. That's what a self-sustaining community is all about. Contributionism goes way beyond that. It creates abundance within your community, within your Ubuntu community, allowing you to make all your goods and services and produce and food, whatever it is you do, available to all your neighboring communities and anyone that comes to you as a community. So that is a unique approach and something that's never been done on this planet. And that's why what we are doing here is so unique and so difficult at the same time, because what we're doing is we're doing away with money. We're slowly, step by step, moving away from the use of money as a tool of exchange and a tool of control. For those that will watch this and that have done their research will understand that money is the ultimate tool of control, and that money is controlled by a small socio-political global elite who have taken control of our planet and used this their right to create money and use money to control the rest of humanity. We are breaking that cycle. For the first time in probably 6,000 years or more, we are breaking that cycle of human abuse, control of humanity by a small global elite, and showing people that it's not only possible, but it is our right and the natural way, the natural order of things, for people to create abundance beyond their wildest belief by simply working together. So in essence, that's what this is. I'm talking to you from the home of Ubuntu, the heart of the Ubuntu, global Ubuntu philosophy, Ubuntu contributionism. This is where it was born. In 2010, it started here, but the philosophy of contributionism was actually born in 2005 while I was writing Slave Species of God in Johannesburg. And that's how it's unfolded. So it's been an interesting journey of discovery. We have volunteers coming here from all over the world, helping us strengthen and stabilize the Ubuntu village, or the head office, or the headquarters of the Ubuntu movement. And then from here, implementing the many community projects for the greater town of Waterval-Boven. And these community projects vary from the fish farm that can breed 1 million fish a month, to mushroom growing, to a bakery, to a dairy, to growing food, to creating a free and alternative source of electricity, which ultimately becomes the foundation upon which we can build this community of abundance. And the exciting thing is that the kind of bright minds and researchers and scientists that we've been meeting on our travels around the world while we're spreading the philosophy of contributionism, these people are sharing their discoveries and their tools with us, tools that can provide free and alternative source of electricity, healing and curing of all disease, providing solutions to every single problem we have as the human race. And that's what we're starting here. This is the incubator for all this stuff right here, in this tiny little town called Waterval-Boven in Mpumalanga, South Africa. It's very exciting to be part of this seedling project that has never been done before, and this is why it's very difficult, but at the same time it's very easy because we've already started walking this path. We're not just talking about it, we're actually doing it. It's not going to be easy, but it doesn't mean it's going to have to take a long time. It means that we have to go through the process step by step, every day take another step forward. And we're already in this process. Very exciting times. We got volunteers joining us from all over the world, many, many countries, to help us stabilize the Ubuntu head office and implement all these many community projects. Funding from all over the world is slowly but surely coming in for the various projects. Simple things like fixing up the sports fields, the soccer fields, the cricket field, the rugby field, the netball, the basketball, the tennis fields, and so forth, because they're completely dilapidated, completely vandalized. The youth have nothing to do. Fixing up the community hall so that people can actually use it has been totally vandalized over the last 10 years. And for those people that think the apartheid legacy has been replaced by a legacy of freedom, are dreaming. They're living they're really not understanding what happened here. We've seen a slow and very serious degradation of people's lives and the services in South Africa in the last 20 years. We've basically gone from one extreme dictatorship to another extreme dictatorship. A dictatorship in the modern South Africa today that's totally and utterly controlled by the global banking elite, taking control of our country, stealing all the assets, stealing all the natural resources, stealing the land from the people of South Africa. This is nothing new to the people of the world. This is happening all over the world. So the one way for us to overcome this is to create these communities of abundance where people work together and create abundance beyond our wildest belief. So if you're interested, join us here in Waterval-Boven. Come participate in this amazing new way forward, an experiment that's never been done before, and something that is growing around the world. The Ubuntu movement has members in more than 215 countries. The Ubuntu Party participated in the South African elections on the 7th of May 2014. There are many Ubuntu parties setting up around the world right now, and I do foresee in the next 5 years Ubuntu parties being present in many governments around the world, and for the first time creating a global movement of consciousness that goes across borders, beyond restrictions, that speaks with the same unity consciousness voice, that crosses all boundaries and restrictions on humans on this planet. It belongs to the human race. So I truly see the Ubuntu contributionism movement as a bright light at the dark, gloomy tunnel of human misery and human enslavement that is waking people up and giving people real hope for the first time in a long, long time. Real hope and true hope, and an understanding that there is a solution to our problem, and the solution is really, really simple. That solution is cooperation, working together for a greater benefit of all the people in our community. I hope this makes sense to you. Now, on the 7th of May 2014, the Ubuntu party ran in the South African elections. So in essence, I ran for president. As funny as that may sound, it's true. Some people say, well, what are you doing? You're selling out. You're trying to create a whole new alternative system and a new beautiful way of life, and then you go into politics, straight into the heart of the beast. To these people, I say, you don't understand how the system works. Pay attention to why it is absolutely critical and important for the global Ubuntu movement, a movement of unity consciousness. It is critical for us to have a political platform and an arm that operates in the political arena. Without that arm, we'll be completely sidelined, marginalized, and we'll be belittled and ridiculed for being a bunch of leftists or separatists or bunny huggers or dope smokers or just lost and utopian people with utopian ideas. So it's critical for this movement to have a political platform and being seen to be very serious about what it is we're doing. The political platform does several very important things. First of all, the first thing it does, it provides protection, legal protection. And we've just been blessed by the Haida birds that agree with me, as you can hear. They're saying, yay, yay, yay. They provide, the Ubuntu party provides legal protection because some of the things we are saying as the Ubuntu movement could be seen as undermining the well-being of a country, which could be seen as treason. Now, if I just go out and say that on my own, I can be locked up and charged with treason. But if I say that on a political platform as a candidate who's running for government, that is my political manifesto and my promise to the people. And what is our promise to the people? Our promise to the people is as follows. And this goes out to the people in Bosnia, to the people in the United States, in the UK, in Australia and Canada, all the other countries that we know that are already setting up Ubuntu parties, and all the others that are confused why we should have an Ubuntu party in all the countries, a trans-border, cross-border movement of unity consciousness that is infiltrating the political arena. This is critical. We all speak with the same message, the same voice, injecting the virus of consciousness into the political beast. That's really what we're doing. We're not selling out, we're not playing by their rules, we are bringing our philosophy into the political arena. This has never been done across borders around the world. The message that we're taking to the political arena, the message to the people is, we're going to close down the Reserve Bank, close down the privately owned, Rothschild-owned central bank that does not benefit the people. This is the bank that controls the people by issuing their private money for which they charge inexorbitant taxes, interests, and enslaves the people of every country of the world, with the exception of probably no more than 3 or 4 countries of the world. So this is the message to all the people of the world who want to start an Ubuntu party. The first step is to take control of the money supply. Make sure that you replace the centrally controlled central bank, privately owned central bank, and replace it with what? Replace it with a people's bank. A people's bank that prints money and creates money by the people, for the people, that is controlled by the servants of the people, which is called the government. So if the government is a true servant of the people, the government creates a people's bank. This has been done many times in the past in Australia and Canada, in England, in all parts in the United States, where central banks were owned by the government, therefore were people's banks. If you have a people's bank, you can issue money for the people, by the people, tax-free and interest-free. No interest or tax needs to be charged on this money that's created. And this also means that this money can be created for every community project, every need of society in your country. So in small countries like Bosnia or Ireland or even Australia, where you've got a large country but a small population, this can be implemented very successfully. The moment you can provide money and create money for every community project, from fixing up the roads, fixing up the sports fields, fixing up everything, there is no unemployment. Everybody will have a job to start off with. So you release the financial pressure and the slavery through the financial private banks. You release the people from that enslavement, and you allow them to think and feel free and not feel so stressed and anguished how they're going to survive from month to month, because that's ultimately what's happening right now. People struggle to survive month to month. They worry, how am I going to see it through another month? The moment you create a people's bank, all of that stress leaves and people feel free. They can move to small towns, because wherever they move to, there will be projects created to create a job or a purpose for everyone, from the large cities to the smallest little villages. Everyone will have something to do. Why can I say this? Because the money will be created by the people for the people, to build roads, build bridges, build hospitals, build healing centers, create new energy devices. Now, once you got control of the supply of money, you can invite all the greatest scientists in the world to come and create inventions and develop new petroleum products, develop cures for all disease, to implement all the latest technology, work on all the scientific solutions, to cooperate and not compete. And through the cooperation of these scientists that you can pay, because you're creating the money for the people, by the people. You then make these scientific discoveries and breakthroughs available to the people of your community and your town and your country with immediate effect. You can see how this will have a knock-on effect in every aspect, in every crack and crevice of our society, from producing food, producing new energy, how we drive. Will we still drive cars that operate on petroleum? Of course not. We're going to travel completely differently. So remember, the moment you take control of the bank and turn it into a people's bank, all these things will be affected. So start thinking about this. This is why it is a critical and most important first step. And then please go onto our website, the Ubuntu website, and see all the other steps that we promise the people in our political manifesto, starting with taking control of the supply of the money. Everything else follows from there to a utopia, a world without money. Because as you start using and implementing this process, people realize very quickly that we don't actually need the money. People do everything, money does nothing. Slowly but surely, we'll stop using the money and start living the utopian, yes, utopian, and that's a good word, utopia. It's not a bad word. It's where I want to be and where everybody else probably wants to be, in utopia, living in utopian societies of abundance, where everything is available to everyone all the time, because that's how it works. One of the most exciting debates around the world that's been raging for at least 200 years now is free energy and a new alternative source of energy and electricity. And many scientists today are of the opinion that it's not possible, that you can't create free energy and all this. And that just clearly shows that they're completely ill-informed, badly educated, and they're completely out of touch with what's really going on in the universe and beyond our planet. Free energy devices have been discovered thousands of times by thousands of inventors and bright minds and scientists around the world. But every time that happens, those people are either killed, tortured, threatened, or simply removed from society. And their discoveries are very swiftly removed with them, not to reach the mainstream population. However, that is no longer possible because through the internet and through the rapid communication systems that we have today and spreading of knowledge, this is now no longer possible. I've had, and so have many other people that do what I do, have been inundated with inventors and designers of free energy technology. And I've, at this stage, been shown at least 3 energy devices that are not only ready to be released and used without hiccups, but are practical and can and will save humanity from this enslavement. The most impressive one, they range from very large machines that create at least 1 megawatt or more, and are pretty much infallible, to small little devices that create 12 volts that never stop, give you perpetual 12 volts, which are obviously applicable in your home for your computers, your cell phones, small home devices and so forth, to boiling water with sound. Instantly, sound frequencies, resonance that boils water, virtually instantly. We can replace all the giant power plants on Earth that boil water using coal or nuclear fusion to boil water to create steam that drive the turbines and give us electricity. Well, that can be replaced now by using a small little device that boils water virtually instantly to create steam to drive the turbines to give us electricity. So the solutions are there right in front of us. We just need to take them and use them and apply them in our community. So that's really what we plan to implement here in Waterval-Boven and bring to the people, and use this as an example for the rest of the world, how simply this can be done. It's much easier to do this in small towns and small communities than to try and implement this in large cities. So I urge people in small communities to start looking at what we're doing here and emulate and follow and improve on what we're doing here. We're just the guinea pig here. Once we've done this here, we'll know how to do it a lot better. So learn from our mistakes, learn from our experiences, email us and tell us how you can do it better or how we can improve on this global knowledge. Let's share this information. Let's cooperate. Let's not compete. Remember, competition is the worst thing that's ever happened to humanity. Competition destroys families. It destroys love. It causes friction. It causes division. It destroys knowledge from being shared with everybody because it becomes the possession of corporate greed. Competition is what drives corporations to take control of our lives and to control humanity. So let's get rid of competition and let's bring in cooperation on all levels of human endeavor. One of the most exciting things I've seen in the United States in 2014 was a mainstream big device. It's about the size of a small car, and it generates a minimum of 1 megawatt power. The inventor is a crazy German scientist who's royal bloodline. No one's going to mess with him. He's a very smart guy that is going to make sure this is available not only to governments and the corporate greed corporations, but also to communities and people around the world that can really put it to benefit of the people. And so in our small town, we just need 1 megawatt unit. But this particular scientist prefers to make 10 megawatts or 50 megawatt units that, you know, can drive large towns and large cities. And this is very exciting. So the solutions for free energy are there. If somebody is, or some ill-informed scientist is still trying to tell the world that free energy is not possible, that it's a pipe dream, they're ill-informed, and then they need to go back to school. How do you explain to people in a small community that they should go along with us? You don't need to explain anything to people. I think everyone in the world knows that something is wrong. All you need to do is remind them of some of the simple facts. And the facts are that we appoint our leaders to be our servants. Whether it's your local municipality, whether it's your local government, or whether it's your national government. These are people we elect into power or into a position to being the servants of the people. They're supposed to do for us what we the people want. That is clearly not what's happening. The opposite is happening. The people that we elect into government, who we think are going to be serving the people, our government leaders, have turned the people of every country into their slaves. So the message to the people everywhere, in every community, every country, is recognize what's going on here and take control. It's about the people. The people have the power. And realize that the only way we're going to get out of this is by completely restructuring the socio-political system. The current socio-political system uses money to control the people. So it's going to have to be money that is used to free us from this enslavement and remove the money so that it can never be used to re-enslave the people again or to keep them enslaved. As soon as you got any kind of form of money or barter or trade or exchange, that can be abused by people for the benefit of a few and at the expense of everyone else. That's what we need to get away from. And by explaining to people that by working together and setting up the community projects, and we all know what we need in our own communities. So every one of those needs to become a community project, that everybody contributes a few hours per week. And we're working at this stage on the theory of 3 hours a week. If you have a town of 1,000 people and everybody contributes 3 hours a week to one of the community projects, you can imagine how much product and how much food you're going to have, how many bridges you're going to have, how clean your streets are going to be, how many eggs you're going to have, and how much cheese you're going to have. You're going to have so much stuff, you're not going to know what to do with it. And it's at that moment that you can make it available to all your neighboring communities. That's three hours a week in a town of 1,000 people. It's 3,000 hours a week. You put the numbers together and realize how much abundance we can create. The foundation upon which this can be built is the foundation of electricity or energy. Once we have an alternative source of electricity, everybody can be offered free electricity, uncapped electricity for your town, in your town, to everyone in your town. But in return for that free electricity, they have to work for 3 hours a week in one of the community projects. And this way we can create abundance. So we utilize the electricity to unite the people so that everybody can benefit, as opposed to using the electricity component or the free energy device that could possibly divide the people. There's a very fine line here, because if you start handing free energy devices out to everybody, that might actually be a bad thing. That could lead to people being divided and separated, trying to hold on to their own little energy device for their own benefit, as opposed to using the free energy device for the benefit of everyone in the community. So please look at it from that perspective.